coming? Oh, man, you're crazy. Nobody knows the day or the hour. No, that's true. Nobody does know the day or the hour, but we surely do know the season. And now we've got scientific evidence. We have found out the year. Imagine that. A darkness is about to engulf the world. A darkness unlike anything mankind has ever experienced in the annuals of history.
Now, when you're saying a darkness, is that darkness coming from the powers that be on Earth or from elsewhere?
Both.
So maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
We told about the Anakai. The Greeks called them the mystical cherubs, the Greys, what they were doing. We knew through the Eisenhower memos with his meeting in 1955 in Holloman Air Force Base. And there is 2 films that we got to watch called Silver Wheel, 1 and 2, of where these crafts followed the presidential plane down there. It's very well documented. People know about it. But the memos are well hidden. Nobody wants to know about it. But we do. Although I've never seen them. I mean, I've been to Abilene, Kansas, and I spent 3 days there at the Eisenhower Library. And they showed me things that are not privy to the public. But the memos, they're well hidden. They wasn't there. And what could be in them memos? Simply that Eisenhower was given an ultimatum. This is what we're going to do. And you allow us to do it, or we'll just go ahead and destroy the world now. The choice is yours, Mr. President. Eisenhower had his hands tied, just like Truman did. Kennedy was going to drop the whole ball of wax, and of course you know what happened to Kennedy. So Reagan, during that second meeting in '86, Reagan had a brainstorm. I probably can do this, achieve it. Kennedy couldn't. Reagan almost lost his life over it too. When I say the powers of a darkness is coming, and that darkness is already here, running this government, controlling it. But there's an evil, much evil darkness coming out. It's called the Draconians. The Hebrews called them the Raphiniums, the dragon beasts, the dragon men. We call them the Draconians. On my last trip to Peru in '89, got to meet a small tribe, about 20, 30 miles east of Cusco, Peru. And these people are all Caucasian, every one of them. Some of them had blonde hair, some had red hair. And they spoke a very strange dialect. And they were looked over by a Catholic monk. And the Catholic monk told me, he says, "You know about these people?" I said, "Yes, they're the descendants of Incas." He says, "They are." He says, "Let me give you something that they talk about they pass it down from generation to generation to prepare for." And he gave me a little statue they had made of a draconian. Hold still, I'll show it to you. This is what I was given. This is what killed many people. Can you see that?
Uh-huh.
It is a hand carved. This is a draconian, a dragon before a Raphinium. The story that goes that they would return one day. They would return to destroy Jehovah's creation. This is the mythical Lucifer. And actually his name is not Lucifer, it's actually Hallel. I think the terminology of Lucifer has been given a bad rap. Again, the truth is never told. The truth has been hidden. It's been purposely hidden. And in 1990, I started getting a very bad taste in my mouth with the agency. I was segregating myself from many of my brothers and sisters. They couldn't understand why. Michael and Daniel, I think, knew. The others, though, didn't. And Michael and Daniel would talk to the others. Leave him alone. He is doing something. I started putting together the terminology and the prophecies concerning this great country we call America within the time frames of the Bible code that we were all trying to break. And the Bible code, I mean, I don't want to really go into that because it is really, really complicated. It is mind-boggling. And I don't think the average Joe, even theologians, have trouble understanding it. And but America would become the third and the final Babylon. And as Revelation 17 and 18 says, the world will watch her burn, for she came from her mother. Well, America's mother is Great Britain. Many of the people that came to this country came from England during the early years of 1600 and some, the colonies, breaking away from the evil that the Catholic Church was imposing on the people there in Great Britain themselves. And not only in Great Britain, Europe. The tentacles of the dragon was coming out. And I started writing this, and I started putting it together, and the more I uncovered, the nastier I felt. And I says, a country that was founded on God's laws and God's truth, and we will see this country dissected from the inside out by this great darkness that I'm talking about. And the people will never be suspect anything. It will happen so suddenly, so secretly. A government within a government. Now, they can blame the Masons, they can blame the Illuminati, they can blame, hell, Mickey Mouse if they want to. But the truth of the matter is that the people of this country allowed it. They allowed a force under a political party come to be. This country's got no room to be talking about, well, Hitler killed 6 million Jews, or the Muslims are beheading Christians and everybody. Well, that evil is coming. That evil is already here. When America allowed this party to come to the forefront, and the people that lived here, the original Americans, we can't have them running loose. Open genocide. You know who I'm talking about. Native Americans. You don't hear nobody talking about that, do you? Over 30 million Native Americans were just exterminated. But let me go down to history books, Margaret. The Native Americans were savages. They were wicked people. Well, let me ask you something. If somebody broke into your house and they're coming to harm not only you but your family, wouldn't you become savage to protect them? So what's the difference between what you would do and what the Native Americans did? There's no difference. Anybody in their right mind would become a savage. Yet, the agency now was looking at us as a major threat, because we not only knew what was coming, they did too, and we were threatening to go publicly. They didn't want to hear that.
So you told the agency that you needed to take this stuff public?
Oh, we told them, you need to start telling the people of this country right now to start preparing. You need to tell them what's going on within this country, why there's still time to save it.
And they didn't.
No, they didn't. Again, it comes back to power and greed.
Now, so you started to kind of back away, even though you were still working for the agency, but you started to back away.
Mm-hmm.
because you're seeing you. Are they still doing? You were with the agency from what 82?
82 to 93.
Okay, and I mean they were still doing studies on you in 93.
They were still doing regressions on us.
Yes. How often would you guys go into regression?
Well, I think during 1990, I think I had probably a total of 15, maybe 16 sessions alone, just on me. And they could not allow this to go public. And especially the things that I was talking about. They were actually talking to my father through me. They were talking to my father through Daniel and Michael. Our father was coming forth and telling them, listen to my children, for they have brought you something. They will not bring it a second time. What you choose to do, choose wisely, because you will not be given a second chance. For judgment is coming upon you. And you know, when judgment is upon you for what you have done, maybe it's time to ask for forgiveness and amend your ways. They didn't see that. Because now, if they did, you lose that power. They had a lot of power. They didn't have no power over us, per se. But they could have made it hard for people we knew. You know, they could have made it hard for us, probably. But they didn't. But I was getting a very, very bad taste in my mouth. And it was during this time, I guess about the end of 91, I told my wife at the time, I says, I'm going to share something with you, and I don't want to go no further. But you need to start packing your things and get ready to make an exit back to Texas. I said, trust me on this? And I asked her, I said, do you trust me? She says, yes, I trust you. And you love me with all your heart. She says, yes, where's this going? I says, you need to get out of Virginia as soon as possible. Quietly, unannounced, and show up at your parents' house. And take good care of my daughter. I says, things are starting to come about. And the people here in Virginia are not going to like it. And Kathy trusted me. She did. And I think it was about the 1st of 93 she left. I wouldn't see her for, oh my God, almost 2 years.
So she took your daughter and went back to
Texas.
And
it would be about the end of 93 I made my move. I left the agency, and I left unannounced. There was only one person in the agency that I trusted with my own life, and that was Giles. And I said, do not follow me. Do not look for me, because I won't be found. And I says, when I leave, you need to act surprised. He tried to talk me out of it. He says, oh, this is going to be bad, Eddie. I said, I know it's going to be bad, but it's already bad. I will not be no part of it. And I told Giles why I was leaving. I would not be no part of the evil that had already came to Washington.
And that was who? Or
Bill
why?
Clinton.
Bill Clinton. Okay. So in 93, you left. So your wife's in
She went back to Texas.
And
I went on the lam. I took all my research stuff with me.
Because that belonged to you.
No, it belonged to me. Of course, I was called a thief, a traitor, rogue. I was called everything except who I was. And when I left, it was probably within 8 to 10 days. Aquarius was no more. It folded up. My brothers and my sisters, they all disappeared. Every one of us. Because, as Michael, my brother, had told me, he says, yeah, he says, when you left, we knew that you didn't leave just because you wanted a vacation. You left because of something very vile. And we knew you had found something. And we knew that was a time that he has found it. We need to follow his steps. And they did.
So 32 others left.
Every one of us. Every flat one of us.
So yeah, I can imagine what that did to the agency.
I stayed hidden for a while. I had friends that I had made across the country. And I stayed maybe a few days here, a few days there. I camped out. I stayed in hotels. And, I called my wife. But we had already planned this. At the time, I would buy a throwaway phone. She would buy a throwaway phone. Yeah, our lives were separated, but it was my dealing, and I prepared her for this. So, Giles knew that I had gone somewhere, but I was in the country. And within that time span, Giles would he would contact me. Giles was in hot water himself. And I'll tell you more about that on the next segment.
So you were saying Giles ended up in hot water also?
Yeah, because they knew Giles was very close with me. Giles was close with all of us, but Giles was particularly close with me because he had found, he said, I was so easy to hypnotize. And the things that Giles was uncovering for me, I didn't go into detail under hypnosis with the others as I did with Giles. And Giles was noting this, and there was a lot of film footage, a lot of hours of recordings and stuff that was done on me. I mean, I don't know how many hours, but it was in the hundreds. I mean, it might have been over 1,000 hours. You got to understand, these regressions started in '83, and by 1991, 92, these regressions had basically centered down to about 3 or 4 of us, because of the information that was coming. What the others were saying, I don't know. Never saw them. I did see mine, though, periodically. The biggest threat was that I was going to go public. And
but eventually you did go public in, I believe, what?
94.
94. Now, even though, and you had left the agency, because this is something that we do need to talk about. And I've seen the tapes, some of the tapes that have been released to the public. And when Giles taking you under, and you and I have discussed this, that was a cover. So, watching the tape, do you believe that Giles, one, that the agency gave Giles permission for you to go public with a little bit of information, and that Giles gave you a post, or, when he put you under, that he had already given you a post-hypnotic suggestion?
A post story?
Yeah,
Yeah.
to tell that story.
This is how it unfolded.
Okay.
The early part of 94, Giles and I had talked twice since I'd been gone. The second time he called me, he says, we need to meet. And I said, where do you want to meet? He says, I don't want you to tell me where you're at. I'll tell you where I'll be. Let's meet in Wichita, Kansas in 3 days. I said, very good. So I met Giles in 3 days in Wichita, Kansas, and we spent all day talking. The government had done stated that if I give back the research material and the evidence and the documents, they will overlook anything that goes about. Because after all, if I go out there and start talking, who's going to believe me without the evidence? So I told Giles, I says, they're really that blind, aren't they, Giles? He says, they're blind. I said, do they realize what we can do? And when I say we, me and Michael and Daniel, Richard, all of us, do they really, truly understand what is facing them? He says, they know, but they got their hands tied. I said, well, here's the bottom line. I'm going to tell somebody, don't know who. Maybe you'll point me in the right direction. You know a lot of people. But here's the thing. I want my family. I don't even want them thinking about going toward my family. And if they mess with my brothers and sisters, they know who I am. They know who Michael and Daniel are. They also know who Richard is. And you know what? I'm not the person to give a libel threat. I just protect my own. And God forbid they cross that very thin line. Giles says, well, I'll give him a call. We'll talk tomorrow. I said, no, I'm going back home right now. He says, where are you staying? I said, Giles, I wouldn't tell you unless I trust you. I said, I'm staying in Stillwater, Oklahoma right now. And my wife and family is right there. He says, you're not in Texas? No. I said, you pass that on to them, but I am going to talk. Well, Giles called me 2 days later because I left Wichita, Kansas and came back to Stillwater. 3-hour drive from there. Giles says, as long as you return the documents, they're going to leave you alone. And if you're going to tell some of the story, you cannot talk about Vietnam in its entirety. You cannot expose what happened in Vietnam in its entirety because there is generals involved, there is military agency involved, there is high-ranking people now in power that are involved. I said, really? I said, so it's just like what happened a few months ago in Waco. People that know will silence them. When I was talking about Waco, he says, absolutely. I said, and I know what's going on. I said, Giles, don't you know why I left? Well, I know you was getting tired of the bull crap. I said, I was not only tired of the bull crap, I was tired of supporting the bull crap. And now you've got somebody in there just as equally as crooked and as a murderer, and I'm going to work for a murderer? No. I said, you're lucky you've caught me on a day that I am in a good mood. So it was at that moment that they said, okay, we're going to let you expose a little bit of this since you're so adamant and we don't know where you're at. Nobody knows where you're at. But here's what we want you to tell. Why? Well, if you'll give this cover story, eventually it's kind of a massage the public knowledge, and then we can allow you to come forward and tell the whole story. Matter of fact, we'll allow all of you to come out and tell the whole story. So I've got to bargain a little bit with you guys, and you bargain a little bit with me, and eventually you guys are going to let me tell the whole enchilada. Absolutely. Okay. I'll agree with it. I'll agree with it. So Giles made the arrangements. And here's where it really got screwy. Giles was going to make the arrangement. Well, somebody had heard through the grapevine about an unbelievable incident that happened in 1973 in Vietnam. Well, I just happen to know somebody that knows that man. they called Giles Hamilton. Giles says, well, yeah, I know him. Well, I've heard some rumors he works for the Central Intelligence Agency. He says, well, now, I can't verify that truthfully, but I do know him. Well, we'd like to have him come to our UFO convention here in about 2 months, 3 months. Can you arrange it? Well, I think I can. Well, Giles asked me, would I like to go out there? Here's your chance, Eddie. Tell the world. Tell the world. First time ever talking to a UFO convention, International UFO Congress. And I went out there with Giles. Just me and Giles went. And I met some of the people. And I was being presented as a human hybrid. And I can prove it. Well, okay. We brought a little evidence to prove it. Doctor reports, things they knew about me as a child. But remember, Eddie, we have to use this cover story. We can't tell the whole situation because you're going to be naming names, and you're going to have to name units. You're going to have to name this and name that. Well, here is a unit that was actually put together, and let's just say you was a part of that unit. That's all they need to know. Well, what was this unit doing? Well, here's what they were doing. And I looked at it and I said, wow, I didn't know about this. You're a part of this unit. Just place yourself in the mix with them. Okay. It was kind of like a little bit of a white lie had to be told so we could tell the whole complete, transparent truth. Okay. I'll not talk about this, but I'll talk about this because this is what they want. For me to do what they want, then maybe very soon I can tell the whole thing. And I can bring my brothers and sisters all in this fold with me to verify it. Everybody was in conjunction with it. I had not.